I wasn't supposed to hear it. But my sister laughs loud, and my mom has never been good at whispering. I had come home early from work, tired and ready to just sit in my room for a while. As I stepped inside, I noticed the living room light spilling into the hallway. My parents were on the couch, my sister curled up in the armchair, and my brother leaning back with a beer in hand. They didn't notice me standing just out of sight. Then my brother said, almost casually, "Honestly, he's just our wallet with legs." My sister laughed. "As long as he keeps paying, we'll keep pretending we like him." Everyone laughed together, like it was some long-running joke. I froze. My heart started pounding in my chest. I stayed completely still, afraid that if I moved, they'd hear me and stop. They went on, talking about how I always cough up the cash, and how it's so easy to get me to agree to help. My mother said something about how I owe it to the family, and how they just have to remind me of everything they've done to make me pay. They were laughing, but each word felt like someone driving a nail into my skin. For years, I had been the one holding everything together. When Dad lost his job, I covered the mortgage. When Mom's health bills piled up, I paid them without a second thought. I worked long hours, skipped vacations, and lived in a tiny apartment so I could help. I even paid my sister's college tuition and covered my brother's gambling debt more than once. I thought they appreciated it. I thought they cared. Hearing them now, I realized it had never been love or gratitude. It was just convenience. To them, I wasn't a son or a brother. I was a bank account that happened to breathe. I wanted to storm into the room and scream at them, but I couldn't. My throat felt tight, my hands were shaking, and my legs wouldn't move. So I just stood there, listening until I couldn't take another word. Without saying anything, I backed away from the hallway and walked to my bedroom. Every step felt heavy, like I was walking underwater. I shut the door behind me and sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the floor. My ears were still ringing with their laughter. My stomach twisted as I thought about every late night I had worked overtime for them. Every time I had said yes when I should have said no. In that moment, something inside me shifted. I didn't know exactly what I was going to do yet, but I knew one thing for sure. Whatever they thought of me before, they were about to find out what happens when the wallet with legs closes for good. It all started years ago, long before I realized what my family really thought of me. My dad lost his job suddenly, and it felt like our whole world tipped over. He'd worked there for decades, but one day he came home with that blank look on his face, holding a small box of his things. My mom was already having health problems then, so she couldn't work. Her medical bills were stacking up faster than we could keep track of, and the phone seemed to ring every other hour with someone asking for payment. I was just starting to make decent money at my job. Nothing crazy, but enough to get by. I told myself, family comes first. So I didn't even hesitate. I picked up extra shifts. When those weren't enough, I took a second job. For a while, I was leaving home before sunrise and coming back close to midnight, running on coffee and maybe 4 hours of sleep. I told myself it was worth it, that things would get better if I just kept going. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment to save money. It wasn't much, cracked tiles in the bathroom, neighbors who fought loud enough for me to hear every word. But it was cheap, and every dollar I didn't spend on myself went to keeping my parents' lights on, keeping food in their fridge, and paying their mortgage. Food for me became an afterthought. I went weeks eating nothing but instant noodles and whatever was on sale at the grocery store. If I bought meat, it was the cheapest cut I could find, usually in bulk so I could freeze it and make it last. I remember once finding a half-price loaf of bread that was already close to going bad and feeling like I'd scored a big win. When my old car started breaking down, instead of buying something reliable, I sold it for whatever I could get and bought a used beater that barely ran. It had no air conditioning in the summer and no heat in the winter, but I told myself it was fine. I canceled a trip I had been planning with friends for over a year because my sister's tuition was due. I told myself there would be other trips. There weren't. Every time I gave, they thanked me. My dad would pat me on the back, my mom would hug me tight and say, "We couldn't do this without you." My sister would text me heart emojis when I covered her books or rent. Even my brother, who wasn't much for words, would give me a nod and say, "Appreciate it, man." Back then, I believed it was all real. I believed they saw the effort, the sacrifices. Years went by like that. I got so used to working myself to exhaustion and giving them whatever they needed that I stopped thinking about my own life entirely. Every paycheck was already half spent before it hit my account. Every plan I made for myself ended up getting canceled or postponed for them. Looking back now, I can't help but think about how much I gave up without even questioning it. I thought we were all in this together. But if they only ever saw me as the person who paid the bills, then I guess the truth is I was never really part of the family in the way I thought. And if that's the case, what happens when the wallet finally closes? After that night when I heard what they really thought of me, I couldn't look at them the same way. I didn't say anything right away. Instead, I decided to see what would happen if I wasn't so quick to hand over my money. I started small. When they asked for help with a bill, I'd tell them I was waiting on my paycheck and send it a few days later. If they wanted a large amount, I'd send less and say I couldn't cover the rest right now. It didn't take long for them to notice. The friendly tone they always used when asking for money began to fade. My mom was the first to let her frustration show. She called me one afternoon, her voice sharp. She said Dad's stress was through the roof because of the bills and asked if I was trying to put him in the hospital. There was no "how are you?" or "is everything okay with you?" Just straight into making me feel guilty. Then it was my sister. She texted me late at night. "You can't just stop paying my rent. Do you want me to get kicked out?" Not a single word about how she might try to figure it out herself. No offer to pay me back, just pure anger that I wasn't stepping in like I always did. My brother didn't say much directly, but I noticed he stopped making small talk with me. When he did reach out, it was only to ask for money for urgent things. If I hesitated, the messages would get shorter and colder. It became clear, faster than I expected, that the warmth I thought was real had only been there when the money was flowing. Without it, the conversations turned into demands and guilt trips. It was like a switch had been flipped, and now I was seeing who they really were without the act. A part of me had still hoped that maybe I was wrong about what I overheard in the living room, that maybe it was just a bad joke. But the way they reacted now removed any doubt. The love and kindness I thought I had from them wasn't unconditional. It came with a price tag, and as soon as I stopped paying, it was gone. I kept up the act on my end, pretending I was just busy or having a rough month, but inside I was paying close attention. I was testing them, and they were failing every time. They didn't care about me, only about what I could give them. By the time a couple of weeks had passed, I had my answer. This wasn't a family that saw me as a son or a brother. To them, I was nothing more than the person who kept the lights on, paid the rent, and solved their problems with my bank account. And now that I knew for sure, I was done being that person. I didn't tell them my plans. I didn't give any warning. I just knew the next move I made wouldn't be small or subtle. This time, they weren't going to see it coming. Once I knew for sure what they thought of me, I started planning in silence. I didn't make any sudden moves that could give me away. On the outside, I acted the same as always. I answered their calls, sent polite replies to their texts, and even covered a few small things so they would believe nothing had changed. But every day, I was taking quiet steps toward cutting them off completely. The first thing I did was close the joint accounts. There were a couple they had access to for emergencies, but I knew most of the time the money in them went toward things that were far from urgent. I went to the bank and shut them down without saying a word. The teller didn't know it, but each signature I wrote felt like a piece of a chain being broken. Next, I pulled all the money I had in shared savings. That account had been meant for family needs. But after hearing them talk about me like I was nothing but a walking wallet, I wasn't going to let them drain it anymore. I moved every dollar into a new account that only I could touch. I opened it under my name alone and made sure it had no links to anything they knew about. I also canceled every card they had copies of. Over the years, I'd given them just-in-case cards for emergencies. I had trusted them with those, thinking it made things easier for everyone. In reality, it had just made it easier for them to spend my money without asking. One by one, I called the companies and closed each account, imagining their faces when the cards stopped working. After that, I rerouted my paycheck. Before, it had been going into the same account for years, an account they knew well. I had no doubt they kept track of when I got paid and timed their requests around. Now, my earnings went straight into the new account. The old one I kept open with only a few dollars in it, just enough to look normal in case they asked. While I did all this, I took the time to list out every single thing they relied on me. Mortgage? That was me. Utility bills? Also me. My sister's tuition? Me again. Groceries, medical bills, car repairs, loan payments. I had been covering them all. I wrote everything down so I could hit it all in one move, like pulling the plug on a machine. I didn't rush it. I knew if I moved too fast, they'd notice and start asking questions. I wanted them to have no clue until the very moment it happened. Around them, I kept my voice light, joked about work, and even sent a couple of small transfers just to keep the pattern looking normal. In my head, I had already named the day it would happen, Detachment Day. On that day, everything they depended on me for would stop at once. They wouldn't have time to adjust or prepare. It would be like a sudden blackout. And when it came, they would finally know what life was like without their so-called wallet with legs. After setting my plan in motion, I decided I needed more than just my own word for what they had done. If I was going to cut them off completely, I wanted proof, something solid that showed exactly how they saw me. I didn't trust them not to twist the story later and make me look like the bad guy, so I began quietly collecting everything I could. The first thing I did was start recording certain phone calls. Whenever I had a feeling the conversation was going to turn into them asking for money, I would make sure my phone's recording app was running before I picked up. It didn't take long before I caught plenty. Some were subtle, with them hinting about how tight things were and how I should help out a little more. Others were blunt, with demands about bills that had to be paid today or comments about how I was holding out on them. I kept all of it. I also began saving text messages. Whenever they sent me something that was pushy or guilt-tripping, I took a screenshot. I started to notice patterns, how they'd start out with a friendly tone and then quickly turn sharp if I didn't respond fast enough or give them what they wanted. It wasn't just about asking for help. It was about control. Then I came across something that made my stomach turn. I was scrolling online when I found my sister's public post on social media. She was joking with her friends in the comments about how she had milked the family cash cow again and was going on a trip thanks to me. She even laughed about how easy it was to pull the sympathy card whenever she needed money. She didn't even bother hiding my role. It was clear to anyone reading that I was the one funding her life. I saved every screenshot of it. The worst moment came when I caught my mom on a call with her sister. I had answered their call earlier, but instead of hanging up when they switched over to their own conversation, I muted my end and listened. My mom was talking about me. She said, "If he ever stops paying, we'll just guilt him until he breaks. It always works." My aunt laughed in agreement. Hearing those words from my own mother hit harder than anything I'd heard before. I recorded the whole thing. Piece by piece, I built a collection. I kept everything organized, labeling each recording and screenshot with the date and what was said. I didn't tell anyone. I stored it all in a hidden folder on my computer, then backed it up onto a separate drive just in case. When I was done, I gave the folder a name that said it all: Wallet with Legs Proof. I didn't know exactly when I would use it, but just knowing I had it made me feel more in control. For years, they had taken from me without shame, believing I'd never push back. Now, I had their own words and actions ready to speak for me. The day I had been waiting for finally came. I woke up early, made coffee, and sat down at my desk. Everything I needed to do was already planned out in a neat list. There was no second-guessing now. I had been patient, careful, and quiet. Today was the day it all stopped. The first step was the mortgage. For years, the payment had been set to pull automatically from my account. I logged into the bank, found the schedule, and canceled it. Just like that, the house would no longer be paid for by me. I thought about all the times I had rushed to cover it so they wouldn't lose their home. Now, it wasn't my problem anymore. Next were the utility bills: electricity, water, internet. All of them had been coming out of my account without fail. I went into each account one by one, removed my payment method, and closed my access. If they wanted to keep the lights on or the water running, they'd have to figure it out themselves. After that, I moved on to my sister's tuition. I had been paying it every semester without her lifting a finger to contribute. I called the college's payment office, explained that I would no longer be responsible for the account, and removed my information. The woman on the phone confirmed it politely, unaware that this was more than just a payment chain. It was the end of a habit that had drained me for years. When the last task on my list was done, I sat back in my chair. It felt strange, quiet. For so long, my money had been moving out of my account automatically, like a constant leak I had learned to live with. Now the leak was sealed. I knew I couldn't just let it fade away without telling them. I wanted it to be clear and final. So I opened a group message with my mom, dad, sister, and brother. I didn't write a long explanation. I didn't try to defend myself or invite an argument. I simply typed, "As of today, I will no longer be financially supporting any of you. This is permanent." I hit send and set my phone down on the table. For a few seconds, there was silence. Then the call started. First my mom, then my sister, then my brother, one after another, back to back. When I didn't answer, the messages began. Some were angry, accusing me of being selfish. Others tried guilt, saying I was abandoning my family. A few were just pure rage. I didn't open most of them. I didn't reply to any of them. I sat there, sipping the last of my coffee, listening to the phone vibrate over and over on the table. It was exactly what I expected. By the end of the day, there were dozens of missed calls and a wall of unread text. I didn't feel the urge to explain myself. They had made it clear long ago that they only cared about what I could give them. Now there was nothing left for them to take. After cutting them off, I knew they would tell people their version of the story. They'd paint me as ungrateful, selfish, and cold. I didn't want to argue with them directly, but I wasn't going to let them twist the truth either. That was when I decided to use everything I had collected. One night, I sat down at my computer and opened a blank post on a popular forum where people share personal stories. I made sure my username had nothing that could link back to me. I started from the beginning, writing out what had happened in clear, simple detail. how I had supported them for years, how I overheard their jokes about me, and how their kindness had vanished when I slowed down the money. I didn't stop there. I attached screenshots of their texts, showing their demands, their insults, and their guilt trips. I uploaded short audio clips of their voices, laughing and calling me their wallet. I even included the clip of my mom telling her sister they would guilt me until I broke. I blurred out names and any private addresses, but the content spoke for itself. When I posted it, I didn't expect much. I thought a few people might read it and move on. But within hours, the thread exploded. Thousands of comments poured in, and almost all of them were on my side. People shared their own stories of being used by family. Others told me I had done the right thing. Some even called my family's behavior disgusting. It didn't take long for the post to spread outside the forum. Someone shared it on social media, and it went viral. I started seeing parts of my story reposted in places I didn't even know existed. The comments and reactions kept building, and soon it wasn't just strangers reading it. My extended family saw it. Some of them messaged me privately to say they were shocked. A few were angry at me for airing it publicly, but I didn't care. My parents' neighbors saw it too. Word spread fast in my hometown. People began recognizing the situation, even without names. The fallout came quickly. My mom, who had been active in her church, was quietly removed from her committee position. My sister's friends stopped inviting her out. My brother was confronted by people who had read the post, and he didn't have much to say for himself. I stayed silent the whole time, never admitting publicly that it was me. But privately, I sent the link to the group chat with my parents, sister, and brother. No explanation, no extra words, just the link. After a minute, I followed it with a short message. Enjoy the attention. I didn't wait for a reply. I didn't need one. I knew they had read it, and I knew they hated that everyone else had too. For years, they had been happy to laugh at me behind my back. Now, the world was laughing at them, and I didn't feel the slightest bit sorry. It didn't take long for the effects to hit them. Within a couple of months, my parents were in trouble with the bank. Without the mortgage payments I had been making, they started getting notices. At first, they thought they could catch up somehow, but the late fees and missed payments kept adding up. Soon, the bank put the house in foreclosure. I heard about it from a cousin who thought telling me might make me change my mind. It didn't. My sister didn't last long in college after I stopped paying her tuition. She tried to scrape together money by working part-time, but it wasn't enough. Her rent, books, and other costs piled up. One day, I saw a post online where she complained about unfair tuition rules. I knew the truth. She had just lost her free ride. A month later, she dropped out completely. My brother's situation was even worse. He had always been in trouble with gambling, and I had bailed him out more times than I could count. Without me, his debts caught up fast. I heard from someone that loan sharks had been showing up at his place, banging on the door. He started avoiding people in town and barely left the house. The rest of the family didn't stay quiet. Some of my relatives called me directly, saying I had turned my back on my own blood. They told me stories about how hard things were for my parents, as if I didn't already know. They said I was cold and selfish, that I was supposed to take care of family no matter what. I listened to them, but I didn't argue. I had spent enough years explaining myself. Not everyone was against me. A few relatives reached out quietly to say they understood. They had seen how much I gave over the years and how little I got back. Some even admitted they had suspected my family was taking advantage of me. Those messages didn't make me feel proud, but they did remind me that I wasn't crazy for doing what I did. Through it all, I didn't feel guilt. I thought about everything I had sacrificed, my time, my health, my own future, and how they had laughed about it behind my back. I remembered my mother's voice on that recording, talking about guilting me until I broke. I remembered my sister bragging to her friends about using me. And I remembered my brother calling me a wallet with legs, like it was nothing. They had made the rules. They had decided that I wasn't family, just a source of money. All I did was follow their rules to the end. The difference was I played smarter. They thought I'd keep paying forever, no matter what they said or did. They were wrong. When I walked away, I didn't just stop sending money. I stopped letting them control me. And now, every problem they faced was theirs alone to solve. I had finally given them exactly what they thought I was worth. Nothing more, nothing less. It was a quiet afternoon when I heard the knock on my door. At first, I thought it might be a delivery, but the knocking didn't stop. When I looked through the peephole, I saw them, my mom, dad, sister, and brother, all standing there. I could tell from their faces that this wasn't going to be a friendly visit. I opened the door just enough to stand in the frame. Before I could say anything, my mom stepped forward and started talking fast. Her voice kept shifting between soft and sharp, like she couldn't decide whether to beg or accuse. She said they had been struggling, that they were about to lose everything, and that I was making it worse. Then her tone changed, and she said I should be ashamed for turning my back on my own family. My dad didn't say much, just crossed his arms and glared. My sister tried to sound reasonable, saying we could start over, if I just helped them this one last time. My brother, on the other hand, looked angry from the start. He muttered things under his breath about how I was acting high and mighty. When I didn't answer right away, my mom tried again. "We're still your family," she said, her voice quieter this time, like it was supposed to mean something powerful. I didn't respond with words. Instead, I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and opened one of the recordings. I hit play and held it up so they could all hear. It was the recording from the living room, the one where my brother said, "Honestly, he's just our wallet with legs," followed by my sister laughing and saying, "As long as he keeps paying, we'll keep pretending we like him." My mom's laugh was in there too. The sound filled the space between us. No one spoke. The recording went on for another minute, each second heavier than the last. I watched their expressions shift. My sister's face went pale, my brother's eyes darted away, and my mom looked like she wanted to say something but couldn't. When the clip ended, I lowered the phone but didn't break eye contact. I didn't need to say a single word. Everything that needed to be said was already in that recording. My brother cursed under his breath and turned toward the door. My sister followed quickly, keeping her eyes on the ground. My dad muttered something I couldn't catch, then stepped outside. My mom stayed for a moment longer, like she might try again, but then she just shook her head and walked out without looking back. I closed the door behind them. For a moment, I stood there in the silence, hearing nothing but my own breathing. They didn't knock again. They didn't call from the car. They just left. I knew that was the last time they would come to my home. Whatever they had hoped to get from me was gone, and whatever chance they had to pretend nothing had happened had just been erased by their own voices. I packed my things slowly, leaving behind the place where so much had happened. There was no rush. Every box I taped shut felt like a step further away from the life I had been stuck in for years. When I finally loaded the last of my belongings into the car, I didn't look back. I drove until the city I had known was far in the rearview mirror, and the skyline ahead was new and unfamiliar. The apartment I moved into wasn't huge, but it was mine. The rent was higher than I was used to paying, but I could afford it easily now that I wasn't supporting a household full of people. For the first time in years, I furnished a place exactly how I wanted. No secondhand couches, no broken lamps, no saving every penny, just in case someone in the family needed more. I started doing things I had never let myself do before. I booked a trip to a place I had always wanted to see, just because I could. I bought clothes that fit well and made me feel good. I picked up hobbies I had put off for years, spending hours learning new skills without worrying about how much it cost. The freedom felt strange at first. I kept expecting my phone to buzz with another request for money, another emergency I had to fix. But the calls never came, or if they did, I didn't answer. That part of my life was over. In this new city, nobody knew me as the guy who paid for everything. I wasn't the wallet. I was just another person meeting people, making connections. I went to dinners, joined a local club, and started talking to neighbors. Friendships formed naturally, with no hidden strings or unspoken debts hanging in the air. It was quiet sometimes, quieter than I was used to. But the quiet wasn't empty, it was peaceful. I realized how much noise my old life had been filled with. The demands, the guilt trips, the endless cycle of giving without ever getting anything real back. I didn't think about revenge anymore. I didn't need to. The best payback had been leaving, taking away the one thing they had ever wanted from me. Now I got to see what life looked like when every choice I made was mine alone. One night, I sat on my balcony with a drink in my hand, the city lights spread out in front of me. I thought about the people who used to call themselves my family and how quickly they had disappeared when the money stopped. Turns out, when you stop being someone's wallet, you find out real quick who was actually family and who was just shopping. What would you have done, walked away for good or tried to forgive? I keep wondering how different things might have been if they'd seen him for more than just his money. Drop your thoughts below. I really want to hear what you think. If you're into true betrayal and revenge stories like this, stick around. There's plenty more coming, so hit follow and don't miss out.